everybody, welcome to Comic Tropes. I'm your host Chris, and today I've been thinking about this new Justice League live-action movie. Now when it comes to Justice League, adaptations are a bit of a mixed bag. We've had stuff that's pretty wonderful, and we've had stuff that's, well, let's face it, embarrassing.
I'm going after Dr. Eno and that damn weather manipulator.
With the way the size he's talking about, Eno's gonna need a huge satellite dish.
What can I do?
Get somewhere safe.
Well, what can I say? Not all of them are winners. The comic book that I want to review today is a team-up with Superman and Wonder Woman. Only problem is, it came out in 1980 and I don't have a copy today. So I guess I'm going to have to go back in time. The big question, how do I do it? Well, wouldn't you know it, my time chair is in the shop getting repaired, and I could drink my time formula, but I did that last week. So, I think I recall that if you stare at a VHS tape really hard while drinking a Tab soda, it throws you back in time. Let's see.
There's one thing I do know, son, and that is you are here for a reason.
No new taxes.
Of course, it worked. Well, let's go get the issue. There you have it. This comic was produced by Radio Shack in 1980, and you can't really find any Radio Shacks anymore, so that's why I had to go back in time. Just go with that premise, okay? So anyway, look at how busy this cover is. It's filled with like logos and text everywhere. There's like the DC logo, Superman, Wonder Woman, Radio Shack, the TRS-80 Computer Kids, and the title, The Computer Masters of Metropolis. There's only a tiny bit of room for Wonder Woman, Superman, and Lex Luthor to sort of fit in here. They have jammed this thing more full than Dom DeLuise's buffet plate. Thank you. Thank you. That's a 1980s joke. So yeah, in 1977, personal computers started coming out. Apple II series started, and Radio Shack started putting computers out. They were called the TRS-80s. And in 1980, it sort of escalated. They got better. There was the TRS-80 color computer. It was kind of a big deal at the time. I grew up at this point in time. I remember we had an Apple IIe in our home. It was a big deal at the time, and it's amazing how primitive they are by today's standards. So expect a lot of this to be dated, but without any further ado, let's get to reading the actual story. The story begins in a Metropolis City elementary school where a Miss Wilson is teaching a math class to her students. She says, "Let's get seated now, class. We have quite a bit of work to cover this morning, and I just know you can hardly wait to get started on your math lessons." "Ugh, I can wait, Miss Wilson." "Nonsense, Alec. Math is one of your best subjects." Miss Wilson is a tremendous math teacher, and she's also really good at picking up on sarcasm. Alec is one of the main characters, and Shanna is the other. She says, "He's just kidding, Miss Wilson, but if we're going to have a math lesson, where are the workbooks?" "We won't be needing workbooks today, Shanna, thanks to this, our brand new Network 3 controller." "Oh boy, sounds like we're going to be on network TV." And the teacher launches into a very salesy spiel about the Network 3 controller, saying, "Class, the Network 3 controller allows me to connect up to 16 student stations, in this case our TRS-80 color computers, to my color computer, which has a host disk drive. Also, Network 3 permits each student station to save and load programs directly to and from the host, including access to the host printer. Would anyone care to give it a try? After all, you wouldn't want to fall behind those Russian students. They're quite good with computers." The kids excitedly start working on the computers, and the teacher promises them a surprise if they finish their work in time. Let's take a close look at this class. Is there anything that we can pick out here? How about the fact that this is a city elementary school and there is only one black kid in it? Metropolis ain't getting any points for diversity. The teacher says, all right, let's switch on our computers and get started. And then we're told in the caption boxes that for the next hour, there is silence in the classroom as the 6th graders apply themselves to the task at hand. And for that time, even Alec is speechless as his TRS-80 poses problem after problem for him to solve. But Alec's computer doesn't seem to be all that busy, does it?
Have you tried turning it off and on again?
The kids finish their work and the teacher goes to the door to reveal their surprise, and it is, holy cow, Wonder Woman! Wow, what a surprise! Wait till the other classes hear about this! Other classes? Wait a minute, so this is the only class in the school that gets to see Wonder Woman? Who do the other classes get? Are they getting like C-listers like Nipsey Russell and Charles Nelson Riley? Hello kids, let's learn about some computers. Wonder Woman explains that there's a second surprise. She'll be escorting them on a spur-of-the-moment trip to the Metropolis World's Fair to see the computer and electronics technology exhibit. Parents' permission slips, schmarents' permission slips. And speaking of the Metropolis World's Fair, we now cut there and we hear the following. As you know, the theme of this fair is to celebrate the advancements of science and technology in the 1980s. Why, we even have the newest invention for cars. We call them seat belts. On display here are most of the state-of-the-art models of practically everything you could name, from cars to spacecraft, from TV sets to holograms. Holograms, yeah, it's hard to explain, but in the 1980s, we were really fascinated with the idea of holograms, and in fact, they started pumping them into our toys. We had Visionaries and Gem and the Holograms, and none of them ever took off because a hologram is like, oh yeah, that's kind of a cool picture. All right, what else is going on? So anyway, the World's Fair, holograms. Frankly, Superman, we're worried. Ever since we received that threat from the master criminal Lex Luthor, we've placed the fair under extensive 24-hour guard. I'm sure you've done everything possible under normal circumstances, Mr. Murphy, but a threat from Lex Luthor is anything but normal. If he's threatened to disrupt the fair unless he's paid $1 billion ransom, you did the right thing by calling me in. I don't know how this guy has Superman's number, but sure, yeah, it's a good idea to call in Superman. You know what would have been a great idea, though? Is maybe shutting the place down when there's a terrorist threat. The World's Fair official explains to Superman that Lex Luthor threatened the World's Fair because they refused to show his inventions, which, although they are technically impressive, would be glorifying that criminal maniac's ego. Superman then flies off, and you know, this is a good time to mention something good about this issue. This artwork is by Curt Swan, and to many Superman fans, to many DC Comics fans, Curt Swan is the man. I mean, this guy drew the definitive Superman throughout all of the 70s and 80s for sure. He actually got started around 1948 drawing Superman stories at DC Comics, and he definitely became like the go-to guy. He did the best stuff. He even illustrated the final in-continuity story just before Crisis on Infinite Earths rebooted everything in 1985. He did the final story of Superman, Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow, a 2-part story that was written by Alan Moore. It was a really great story. And then guess what? DC rebooted things, and they just let Curt go. Like, totally unceremonious. He did get a little bit of work here and there at DC Comics over the years until he passed away. But for a guy who worked on their biggest character and made him look so iconic for so long, they didn't treat him that well at the very end, in my opinion. But we're talking about this particular comic, and I will say I have zero problems with any of the artwork. I think it's actually quite good. We also get a quick shot of Lex Luthor, who is observing Superman and everything that's going on at the World's Fair from his secret base hundreds of feet below the fairgrounds. Back at the class, Miss Wilson says, after we get back to class, Wonder Woman is going to tell us more about little computers and what they can do. Wait, time out. Little computers. That's a phrase that I have to admit I've never heard. I've heard personal computers. I've heard computers. I've never heard little computers. I was alive at this point in time. I don't remember anyone ever advertising them as such, talking about them as such. That is a very strange phrase to use. Little computers. They're not that little. Anyway, back to the scene. Miss Wilson has mentioned that they're going to learn more about computers from Wonder Woman, and Alex says, "Oh yeah? And what more can Miss Expert tell us?" I'm never going to get through this panel. Alec, don't mouth off to Wonder Woman. She's incredibly strong. But, oh my God. The longer I stay in the 1980s, the more 1980s I become. I better hurry up and get back home. Wonder Woman explains to the sarcastic Alec that she knows a lot about computers because she happens to work with them in her secret identity. Alec thinks he's got her, saying, "Oh, you better watch it, Wonder Woman. You've just given us a clue to your secret identity." And Wonder Woman explains, no, actually millions of people work with computers every day, including bookkeepers. Shanna points out, "What about the US Space Shuttle, Wonder Woman? I read that it's one of the most complex computer-controlled spacecraft ever built." Right you are, Shanna. It has the processing power of nearly 20 of your calculators. Wonder Woman escorts the class to a train that will take them to the World's Fair, and these kids are blown away by a train. They say, "Wow, will you look at this train? It's incredible." Yeah, I mean, trains have only been around for about 100 years by the time Alec's seeing this, so no wonder he's so impressed. The group arrives at the World's Fair, and Wonder Woman asks Miss Wilson, "Would you say they like what they see, Miss Wilson?" "See for yourself, Wonder Woman. Even Alec is speechless." Hold up, this is the second time in the story that we've been told it's amazing that Alec is speechless. This kid must be the biggest wise-ass, but you are the adults. One of you has superpowers. Maybe don't let him mouth off so much. The group makes it to the Computer and Electronics Technology exhibit. Everyone is totally amazed, and Wonder Woman starts talking about the history of computers. Among other facts, she tells them that computers had their beginnings in the United States when the world's first all-electronic unit was completed in the fall of 1945. Just a serious side note, my grandfather actually helped design the very first computer UNIVAC, and it's something I'm quite proud of. It was pretty odd growing up with a guy who knew all sorts of computer programming language. He always knew more about computers than I did. Side note, he also liked stepping on my comic books when I would read them on the floor, and he thought that was really, really funny. So he had his good points and his bad points. The next 4 pages are nothing but Wonder Woman talking about computers and technology. The old-fashioned radio tube was big and bulky, explaining the need for the size of the first computers. But in 1948, a smaller still is the silicon chip. So small, in fact, it can control unit regulates the flow of the data. It is the math logic unit that executes. Finally, we get back to the plot. Superman's flying around over the fairgrounds, and he can't find any sign of Lex Luthor, so he swings by and says hello to Wonder Woman and the kids. "Gosh, Superman, what brings you to the fair?" "A terrorist threat, Alec." Superman pulls Wonder Woman aside and whispers to her, "It's Lex Luthor. He's threatened to disrupt the fair. I've got to stay here until I find him." And Wonder Woman replies, "Well, if you need me, I'll be back at the school with the class for a while, and then I'll be coming here in my civilian identity to take in some of the sights." Wonder Woman, this is Lex Luthor. Get your priorities straight. The next 2 pages are quite boring as the class goes back to their elementary school and Wonder Woman begins lecturing them about how great Radio Shack's computers are. By the way, do you know that your TRS-80 color computer can be used to learn about the history of technology? That's right, all it takes is your color computer and CTR-80 cassette recorder. Right now, Alec, we need a little language lesson. How to talk back and forth with a computer. It's a language called... It's called BASIC, right, Wonder Woman? That stands for Beginner's All-Purpose Symbolic Instruction Code. Correct, Shanna. Then we have to go through a whole page of Shanna and Alec telling the class how a modem works. Now that I've switched on the computer, the screen tells me what to do by showing me video text version 1.1, and now I've pressed the break key. It tells me it's ready and that I should place call. By now I've got that number memorized, so I just dial the number of the information service, and after getting a high-pitched tone, I place the receiver in the interface 2 modem. What's happening now, Alec? Just what you said, Shanna. I'm typing in our ID number and password, but the password is secret, so it doesn't appear on screen. I promise this was not interesting back in 1980 either. Wonder Woman talks about how you can pull information from information retrieval services and play games like chess on the computer and even look at stocks, and it's very boring. Eventually the class ends and Alec and Shanna start talking. I can hardly wait to get home and try out a few of the things we learned today on my TRS-80. Me too. Hey, why don't we meet later for a game of chess with our computers? It very much disturbs me that Shanna said meet in air quotes. What's she getting at? Superman is yet to find a single clue as to where Lex Luthor is, and then Lex Luthor just flies by. Superman begins chasing him. Luthor flies into the planetarium, which is marked as closed. Superman is right behind him, when suddenly Luthor triggers his big plan. It involves shutting off the lights and turning on a red radiation light. In case you're not a big Superman expert, yes, kryptonite will weaken and even kill Superman, but another of his weaknesses is basically turning off the access to his superpowers. Superman gets his powers from our yellow sun. Lex Luthor sometimes finds ways of blocking that and emitting a red radiation that turns his powers off. It doesn't make him like weak or sick, it won't kill him, but he has no superpowers. So Superman is now completely powerless and trapped in the planetarium because Lex Luthor flies away and closes the door. Superman checks the door and sees this tiny little thing here saying, "Great stars, that fiend has wired the doorway with explosives. Even if I could force the door open, I'd trigger an explosion that in my powerless condition would kill me and destroy the entire building." Superman might be jumping to conclusions. That might just be a paperclip. In case you think that this is going to lead to some sort of Saw movie with traps for Superman, no, don't get your hopes up, because Lex Luthor has left a telephone in the planetarium, and it works. Superman thinks that he won't be able to convince a police officer that he's Superman. I don't know why you have to convince him you're Superman, just say that you're trapped in the planetarium. The World's Fair official has already gotten an official terrorist demand letter from Lex Luthor. So I think that they'll take that pretty seriously, Superman. Anyway, Superman decides to call his work, the Daily Planet. But the line is busy, and he says he has no time, so he decides to call Alec at home. Why doesn't Superman have Batman's phone number? Why does Superman have a teenager's home phone number? Superman, wow! Anything you need to know, me and my TRS-80 will get. Thank you, Alec. And while you're doing that, call Shanna and have her page Wonder Woman for me at the fair. And don't forget to tell her about the explosive door. Superman wanted to call the Daily Planet because he knows that Lex Luthor had asked for his inventions to be placed on a specific site, and the Daily Planet had an article about that. He wanted to ask where that site was because he feels it's the best bet for finding Lex Luthor. Now, he's tasked Alec with looking up that article online using a modem. We cut back to the fair where Wonder Woman is in her civilian identity, and a page goes across the entire World's Fair saying, "Wonder Woman, report to the security office. Wonder Woman, please come to security." Well, so much for surprising Lex Luthor. Wonder Woman flies to the planetarium and says, "Since I can't go charging in to save him without the risk of setting off the explosives Luthor has planted around the building, I'll just have to move the planetarium." And with that, she uses her lasso to throw the planetarium into space. In the next panel, the planetarium is up in the sky and Superman is flying from down below. You didn't miss anything. I've read back and forth over these couple pages. I cannot figure out for the life of me how Superman got out of the planetarium. Wonder Woman picked the whole building up and threw it into space. Presumably the explosives are still attached to the door, so I don't know how Superman actually got out of that. It doesn't make any sense. And in fact, in the next panel, Superman literally uses his heat vision to turn off the explosives. The two superheroes then fly and catch Lex Luthor. They have absolutely no problem. No punches are exchanged, no blasts, no action at all. In fact, Lex Luthor actually points out, "You forgot, Superman. I still have my power gauntlets." "I appreciate you reminding me, Luthor. Why don't I just take them off your hands?" At least a third of this book was just droning on about computer history, and we don't even get an action scene against Lex Luthor. Just terrible, terrible. So later that same day, the World's Fair official presents Superman and Wonder Woman with a key to the World's Fair, just a small token of our gratitude. One key for two people. Wonder Woman, why don't you take it on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays, and I'll take it the other days of the week. Fortunately, Wonder Woman likes sharing the credit, and she points out that Shanna and Alec helped, and Alec points out, we didn't do a thing that anybody couldn't do with the help of a TRS-80 color computer. Surprised he didn't mention that they're available exclusively at Radio Shack. Wonder Woman says, we're a team, aren't we? To defeat Luthor, it took the combined efforts of a Superman, a Wonder Woman, a TRS-80 color computer, and the computer masters of Metropolis. That's right. Alec and Shanna were the titular computer masters of Metropolis. Quite a lofty title. Then in the comic we get a page that's a glossary with words like basic, binary, cassette, output device, memory, all that stuff is defined. And then you have a quiz based on computers. On the back page you can, if you're a teacher, request like a pack of 50 of these for free. You just had to send this little cutout along with a letter on like official stationery, and they would send you 50 of these. So I'll say this, if I was a kid in elementary school and I got a comic book for free, that's a little more fun to me than just reading a book or getting lectured, I suppose. So I wouldn't have said no to this. That said, first of all, it's extremely dated. Second, it's not subtle at all about what it's trying to promote. I mean, we just have people left and right talking about all the great products specific to what Radio Shack sold. Everybody's talking about how great the TRS-80 is and all of its little doodads and gizmos that go with it. It was pretty crazy. This was fun. I hope that the Justice League movie is fun. The only way I'm going to see it, though, is if I head back to my normal place in time. And so I'm going to go to sleep, and I'm going to wait for 37 years. Good night! Keep reading comics. Keep reading comics.